Good morning, Dr. Howard. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Valentina. How are you?
I am doing okay. The weather is a little bit wonky with me today. It's messing up my sinuses, but we're fine. We're good. I want to thank you for joining me today to talk about your department, your area, the Writing Center. So, to just get started, please go ahead and tell us what the Writing Center is. What do you actually do in the Writing Center? This is for a first year student, so they have no idea what it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the Writing Center is basically the place you go to talk about your writing and to get great feedback at any point in your writing process. So it's both a physical place. So on the Gainesville campus, it's in the Nesbitt building on the second floor, and other campuses, it's in other places. And then it's also a virtual place. So you can have online sessions if you're off campus and that's more convenient for you. But basically, a tutor is going to meet with you for a half hour and go over anything that you're bringing in. So if you bring in a draft, they can read through that draft with you and talk about anything from organization, introductions, conclusions, topic sentences, stuff like that, all the way down to like citations, sentence level stuff, grammar, spelling, punctuation, all of that. And if you just want to come in because you want to talk about your ideas, you're brainstorming, you're trying to decide what to pick with a topic, you don't understand the prompt, the tutor can help you with any of those things as well. And so I like to think of the Writing Center as the place where like everyone gets feedback on their writing. Professional writers have readers and editors. Your professors have reviewers and editors. Whenever I'm writing something and it's a little bit important, I have someone else read it. And so the Writing Center is a free place where you can get that kind of feedback.
Awesome. Well, you touched a little bit on the fact that everybody has their own editor.
Mhm.
But I want you to make sure this, I want students to make sure to know who can actually go to the writing center. Do I have to be a first year student? Do I have to be a fourth year student? Can I come in? And you kind of touched on this already. Can I come in for any piece of writing? Does it have to be for a class? Does it even have to be like a formal essay?
Mhm. So as long as you're a UNG student, you could be in your first year, you could be in your fourth year, you could be a graduate student, you could be staff. You can come into the Writing Center and get help. Uh, and I lost the other parts of that question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I want to, let's say, get help to write an essay for a scholarship, does it have to be
Mhm.
something that is for a class or
Yeah.
academic focused?
So it can be any kind of writing. And so you can think like it's a composition essay in English 1101. That's a pretty obvious one. But it could be a research paper in history. It could be a lab report in biology or chemistry. It could be you're working on a write-up in kinesiology or a lesson plan in education. It could be a resume or scholarship essay. It could be a poem or a fiction piece that you're working on. We have actually gotten someone writing their novel come into the Writing Center. It could be you're working on an email for a business class because sometimes they'll do business communication stuff there. Um, so any kind of writing, it doesn't have to be something you're taking for a course. Uh, we can help with it as long as you're a student.
Awesome. So now that I know what I can expect as a student, in terms of when I can go and things like that,
Mhm,
what can I expect from an actual session? When I come in,
mhm.
what is it going to look like when I sit down with a writing professional?
So I'll describe like an in-person session or an online session with a video chat. They're going to work almost the same way. So you come in, if you're in the center, you like log in at the computer just so we know you've shown up. Um, and then your tutor should greet you, ask you to sit down, and basically ask some version of what are we working on today? So, you know, what are you bringing in? What initial questions do you have? Are there specific things you want to focus on, or do you just want to get general feedback? And so that'll take a few minutes to get to know you and what you're interested in a little bit more. And then the tutor will, from there, it depends on what you're working on. So if you brought a draft in, they'll probably read the draft either silently or sometimes out loud if that kind of helps the revision process. And then they may ask questions, they may suggest things, they may point things out. Usually what they're doing is they're not just fixing errors or something like that, but they're also explaining the writing process. They're explaining why something isn't working so well and how to improve it. And so they're hopefully giving you a better idea about how to improve that assignment. And then also you're learning a little bit more about writing at the same time. So you're becoming a better writer. And
Awesome.
then at the end of the session, I, I like to teach tutors to wrap up with like 1 to 3 takeaways. Like, what are a couple points that you can kind of keep in mind as you go to the next point in your process, and then that's it. You can come in another time, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I feel like that's such an important part of it because in my first university that I went to, we didn't have a writing center. We just had people in the library who would help you with citations. And
Yes.
they stressed, like every single time you went in, they stressed you have to have everything written, everything done, and then we will look just at your citations. And I would be like, this is very stressful. And I feel like this is a much more at ease process where it's a collaboration as opposed to
Mhm.
somebody just editing your stuff and telling you this is the right way and you did it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I'll add there that all the tutors are friendly. They want to be your ally. Their chief interest is helping you write better. And also, so we have the in-person meetings, we have the online synchronous meetings. We also have something where you can upload your paper and you can get comments back on that paper. So if you're almost done and you just want feedback on a few things, you can basically tailor the session to whatever you need, rather than it just being, we only offer one kind of service. If it's writing related, we'll figure out how to work on it with you.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you touched a little bit on the fact earlier that you have professional tutors, but you also have peer
Mhm.
tutors.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about the differences between the two? I know that they're pretty much trained similarly, but there
Mhm.
are some differences, and maybe students might want to know like when should I try to go to one or the other, or if it
Mhm.
really matters even.
Yeah, so peer is another word for student. So the peer tutors are students, they're current students. They have often taken, if not the same class you have, then certainly, similar classes. They understand what it's like to get a confusing prompt from a professor, how to, succeed in a class. And so oftentimes I find they're able to like break things down in a very friendly, accessible way. And so they're especially useful, if you want to have that kind of peer relationship with your tutor. Professional tutors are staff. They have at least their bachelor's degree in a writing related field. I think all the professional tutors we have right now actually have master's degrees. They are experts in writing. And so they are especially good at, kind of breaking things down. They're kind of in between that position where they're not your professor, obviously, but they know that perspective better. And so they can explain a little bit more possibly of what's going on in the professor's mind when they give an assignment. Um, I think they're both, for most of the writing that comes up, a peer tutor or professional tutor is going to work fine. It just depends on what you feel more comfortable with. And I would suggest, if this is your first semester, trying a session with either one and just kind of seeing.
Awesome. Yeah. And I
Mhm.
I realize that you touched a little bit on like how you have different ways to do appointments. That you have online synchronous, you can also just submit things. But
Mhm.
how do I actually log on and make an appointment with a tutor or
Mhm.
somebody at the writing center? Is there a place online to do that? Can I just
Mhm.
walk in? What does that actually look like?
So this is a funny question because we are right now building a new scheduling system and getting that set up. So I can't answer in detail, but the short answer is yes, there will be a way to make an appointment online, um, and then to show up at the whatever time you book and to work with someone that way. Now, we also try to accommodate walk-ins. So if we have a free spot on the schedule, we'll fit you right in and we'll work with you as soon as we can. You can imagine there are some busy times during the semester, like midterms or finals, where it may take a little bit longer to fit you in. And that's when I especially suggest making an appointment. But yeah, basically, if you find us, we'll try to work with you.
Awesome. Yeah, I like knowing that I can go into a place and if I need the help, that there are at least ways to accommodate me because when there is
Mhm.
such a finite structure, it feels as a student like you can't really go or you have to know the process or
Yeah,
ask somebody else, hey, how do I do this? Because I don't know and I don't want to do it the wrong way. So it's good to know that as a student, you can literally just whatever way works best for you, you can figure out how to do it and you guys will help.
yeah.
Which brings me also to my next question, which I'm going to try to word it as best as I can. But basically, what are the benefits of actually going to the writing center? Let's say that I'm a student and I'm doing well with my writing, but I want to do better. How can the writing center actually help me do that? Even if I'm not necessarily struggling with something in a class.
That's a good question. And I kind of touched on that before with that idea that everyone benefits from writing feedback. To go a little bit more in detail, like think about the writing that you do for a class, for instance, and you write it, you turn it in, you get comments back. Sometimes the comments are detailed, other times they're not. And I know, I experienced this as a student. Sometimes I'd get comments back and I'd think, I don't understand the comment that was
Right.
being left. I don't understand what this is trying to tell me. And so one thing that writing tutors do is that they can come in even before you get feedback from a professor, and they can already be giving you personalized feedback. So feedback that is really useful for you. And you can ask questions in the session in turn, if there's something that you don't understand, or if there's something that um, you feel like you're doing generally well as a writer, but you want to improve, you want to do a little bit better, you can ask about that as well. Um, some of the Many of the students we work with, they're probably getting, maybe a B or an A, but by coming in frequently and getting that kind of feedback, it's sort of like the metaphor might be academic, not academic coaching, just coaching, physical coaching. If you've ever been on a sports team or something and gotten that kind of personal feedback on your form, on what you're doing, on what you need to do in specific situations, all that's tremendously useful and informative for, not just like, I don't know where I was going with not just, but for improving what you're doing. Um, okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it did. Like, because I feel like the way that I was introduced to writing,
Hmm.
it was just you have to answer this question. You have to do it in
Hmm.
3 paragraphs. If it's a longer essay, like 5 with 3 body paragraphs, introduction, conclusion. And it's like ever since I was a kid, it was always introducing the structure that I had
Hmm.
to write with. And then getting into college is very different. You had to understand different ways to write. There was
Hmm.
academic writing, like if you're writing a research paper, but then there was also compositional. There was writing for essays, like when I was applying to college. Now that I'm going to law school, how am I going to write those essays differently than I did for going to college? Like there's so many different types of writing, and you
Hmm.
have to figure out when you get to college, especially what your voice is.
Yeah.
Because you're never really asked what your voice is before college. I feel like you're just told you have to do this or answer this question, but you're not really expected to understand complexities or
Yeah.
critical thinking. That's something that college is meant to do. So I feel like when you have an actual coach sitting with you and explaining to you what things are, why things are the way they are, or why they're suggesting this feedback, you're not just sitting there and having somebody revise it. You're actually learning what a process looks like in writing. And you're learning how you think also, because it's something that you
Yeah.
kind of have to become aware of when you're writing. Because if not, you tend to fall into those older habits of, I'm just trying to finish this, or I'm just trying to do what my professor wants.
that was a great answer, and I want to highlight a couple of things in that that I think writing tutors do particularly well. One is you mentioned critical thinking, and uh, it's a buzzword, but one thing it means is oftentimes being able to bring a new perspective on something that you're already seeing, that you already know. And so it's not just sort of like being able to restate information you already know, but it's being able to turn that into an argument, to turn it into a new insight or something like that. And oftentimes when you have conversations with other people and they ask you a question you hadn't considered, that's the start of critical thinking. And that's something that you can do, especially with a writing tutor, when they ask you something about, the argument that you've made, and they ask, well, what about this? That's starting you to where you can do that yourself, because as you start to hear other people ask those questions, some of that soaks in, and some of that, like, you can learn to do that critical thinking as well. And we all learn by having those conversations with other people, and a conversation with a tutor is a great way to start learning that. But then, on the broader scale, thinking about, high school writing is often, as you said, formulaic, it's often structured. They tell you exactly how much to write. Um, but once you start getting on the college level, there are not just a whole bunch of writing genres, but you have to decide for yourself a lot of those things, like how long do you write it? How many paragraphs do you have? How do you break things down? How do you organize it into sections so that it makes sense to an audience? And so starting to think about, what is your purpose in writing? Who are you writing to? How do you organize things and structure things yourself? Sometimes, how do you format things? You even have choices in formatting sometimes. So you're not just double spaced 12 point Times New Roman font, but maybe you can incorporate pictures or something else. And that starts to get you into the writing that you might do as a professional. So you might end up conceivably designing brochures or designing fairly visual kinds of writing. You might end up writing emails where you're asking for budget or asking for money to do something that's important to you. Uh, and, how do you get from, I only know how to write a 5 paragraph essay, to being able to do all the kinds of flexible writing you might have to do in the future? Well, you have to learn how to think about it. And you can start to learn how to think about that, not just by receiving feedback from your professor, though that's important, but also by talking about writing with other people, by talking about writing with a tutor, with if you have an SI facilitator, talking about it with them, talking about it with your peers. And talking is a great solution to things.
It really is, because when you're writing, I feel like you're in a bubble.
Hmm.
And if you're doing it by yourself, you don't really know what you're doing wrong. You just know that it's not working. Or if you're
Hmm.
stuck, you don't know how to get out of it. When you
Yeah.
make it a collaborative process, it takes away that stigma. It takes away that feeling that you don't know what you're doing, but you're expected to know what you're doing. Like, all the pressures kind of go away. It becomes more of a process that you feel you're not alone in. You're learning,
Hmm.
you're getting to know yourself, getting to know your voice as a writer. It becomes a totally different thing, which is really important in college,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I'm a fourth year student and I'm still learning what my voice really is.
Hmm.
I've learned so many different formats, and I'm a political science major, so I have a very specific way of writing those things. But I know that I have a different voice for other things, like for academic um, writing, for other types of things. So it's just, I recommend the Writing Center tremendously. I've gone in and just sat down sometimes
Hmm.
just to hear what other people are saying while I'm doing my work. And it's a
Hmm.
very, very nice place to go to. It's not like this rigid structure that we're all used to in high school. It's like a nice place where you come
Hmm.
to sit with somebody and just talk about writing. I feel like that's the best way to explain it.
And I'll add to that, especially on the Gainesville campus, we have enough space where usually if you just want to come in and get some writing done, we have computers in there that you can sit down and do that at. There's also a computer lab that's kind of next door where you can go and sit and do that as well. We have space if you want to just sit and like write on your laptop or something like that. So yeah, you don't have to come in and have an appointment or come in and meet with someone. You can just have a quiet place to work.
Oh, yeah, and it's, like, really nice. There's posters everywhere that help
Yeah.
you, like, do things. There's, like, writing utensils, there's
Mhm.
tissues, there's printers, like, there's all sorts of things. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And on that happy note, I wanna say thank you, James, for joining me today, for telling everybody about what the Writing Center is. I hope that everybody goes and that you're swarmed with students in the fall.
I hope
Um,
so too. Yeah. I hope I see you all. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you very much again for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Valentina.